Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today we're going to look at this Harad game, Yemen. Now, I don't actually know where this is. I've sort of guessed. It's supposedly in this territory here. So this is Jizan province. I sort of know that, and that's the border with Jizan province, and the next one. But I don't know where Harad is. I sort of looked at it, and this is actually the video for it that's on YouTube, and they basically look like a ragbag bunch, and there are more of them. There's sort of later on you see a different sort of set, but the thing is, they seem to be acting. That's pretty much they're a team, and one of these is, you know, a sort of company-sized unit. And now I've never really anticipated them as actually being company-sized, but I wouldn't really imagine that one of these was actually as small as that. But you know, I don't use smaller units, so it doesn't make a lot of difference. But basically, they go around and take over 20 positions. Now this is in Saudi Arabia, and what they're doing, they're sort of, I think, well, basically they're just trying to put the pressure on Saudi Arabia on their own territory. But it's interesting sort of to watch that video. I mean, some of these sort of emplacements are just sort of like rock outcrops, and they seem to sort of progress slightly. So that's sort of what this reflects, because it's no small measure to take these 20 outposts. I mean, you know, they're clearly sort of, you know, in some way fighting for them, because when they get there, there's lots of guns and ammunition, and you know, you don't really get that just hanging around, and you know, documents and things like that. So, but what I've sort of considered really is that these are similarly comparable sized units to these, in the sense that they might be sort of like, you know, 5 or 10 people, you know, dealing with that sort of length of border, or something like that. And what they are doing strategically, in my perception, is basically retreating or moving away. So there's not a major fight. You know, they're not sort of counter-striking. This is, you know, if you look there, they're just 1-1s, and that's quite deliberate. And what you'll see, I played it yesterday, just out of interest, and that's why I put these units here, because I broke through here. I think I eliminated him, and there's literally nothing that can stop me from just routing all the way through here, because these units can actually move 2 through hills, and the infantry are stuck at 1, so they move a lot faster, and you basically can't catch them up. So, but what I'm anticipating is that sort of these units are sort of more retreating. I mean, there are actually some bodies, I think, in this video, but I didn't see too many of them. You know, the positions seem to be quite empty. I think they ran away or something. So some of the territory looks incredibly bizarre in the video. I don't want to spend time trying to play it, but basically there's just rows and rows of, not entrenchments, but embankments. It's like someone's been sort of working overtime with, you know, a digger or something. But you know, it's quite surreal, because, you know, every sort of like 100 yards there's just this earth embankment, you know, obviously defensive work, and it just sort of, you know, I mean, it's so apparent that war is so ingrained in their entire geography now. But I chose this part of the of Jizan province, well, mainly because, to some extent, well, I didn't do this. It's identifiable. It's not just another piece of border. You should be able to recognise it from the shape as well. But I chose this part of Jizan province because it's the least sort of populated. If you look at a map, you start to get sort of town densities. I put these towns down here just sort of inside, just so that you can get some perspective. Otherwise, it's just this open block of hills. But it is basically all hilly. I wish I could maybe improve the graphics a little. I think they're functional, but you know, I sort of when you've just got a map with just hills on it, it's not as good as it could be if you had some sort of extra graphic element to it to make it look more varied than just a brown mat. But the thing is, if you go further sort of east and sort of west and southwest, it becomes more and more built up. And from this video, they're not really fighting near towns. They seem to be sort of out in the wilderness. So I've chosen this bit, and then I sort of thought, well, they've probably got some border lines. That's probably what they're fighting for. But they're actually going quite deep into Saudi Arabia territory, and it's interesting, really. And I mean, and as it happened, Saudi Arabia are planning quite a major offensive, not on this bit, but basically northwest Yemen. And so I'm not sure whether that would have anything to do with this, but what they're having difficulty with, I think, is actually tracking these sorts of people down. I mean, they're not even wearing sort of combat gear. They could probably take off their vests and look like honest farmers or something. But anyway, I'm going to jump in and play it. I mean, I played it yesterday actually. This one can get a 2-to-1 right in. Doesn't really matter how I do it, and he should have 0.6 left. I know this because I did it yesterday. He should just about be able to get there. And he's going to wait a few turns, but breaking this one out is actually quite useful because it creates a big hole here. And once you break through, let me get my little, what do we call it, out. Once you break through, their line is more like that because they don't have anything there, and there's this little guy on his own over here. I eliminated him, and then you just sort of pour straight through here. So the thing is, what you've sort of got to do is, as soon as one of these breaks, this whole line, get another colour. Decisions. I don't know why this thing did those decisions are so hard. But when one of these breaks, it's sort of tempting to just sit there because you dug in. But if that started to happen, you basically got no choice really other than to start sort of moving back and trying to contend with it. This was here before, but even so, they're just not moving fast enough. And so what you've got to sort of do is start moving all these units back, and then possibly trying to create some kind of defensive line. And I doubt it. I mean, I doubt that you'll be able to do any counter attacks, but I doubt it. But if possible, do some counter attacks. But if we can get all these units back and then form a much smaller line, then that would sort of stop them. But what I'm saying is, you can't just leave these here and defend this, because they just will, run wild in this sort of open space here. So these lines, once one of these goes, the whole front pretty much has to go. You'll see what I'm saying in a bit. So that's how far they can move. This is going to be a 2-to-1 from memory. Yep, but exchange. Oh well. This is a 2-to-1 as well. Exchange. I did better yesterday. Okay, now here's the interesting part. Well, it's not actually as interesting as it was yesterday, because basically there's nothing to move apart from this one unit, and even him you might not want to move him. This unit fell back yesterday and fell back to that point, so there are places to fall back to, but this is just a stretched line. But what I do with these is possibly interesting. This is what I didn't have yesterday. I only had that one, but yes, just moving them forward really. Push them further north, if anything. And that's it. They can't do anything else. I mean, I could opt to move him out, but he'll recover this turn, and if they choose to fight, they'll be weaker. So, okay. Do we want to recover? I think so. Another exchange, and they're just going to regroup. We haven't even broken through the front line yet. They're not going to do anything, but they are going to move these units. See, the Saudi Arabian player doesn't really have much to do. Alright. Because he's depressed, but he should be okay now. Exchange. I think if this is another exchange, I think I'll qualify for saying this is like I'm having a bad game at I won that one. Once they're out of their entrenchments, they become a lot easier to get. But I can't move now because or can I? No. See, that's where it starts. You see, now he can move back to that point. Let's get that nice yellow one out. See, he can move back to there, which will give us still gives them that line. If we can bring him down, we can bring these lines to sort of meet behind us, as best I can get, something like that. But there's space to fall back here, and I can start that with this one unit. So I'm not going to try and go back into there. Yeah, I'm going to recover these. I think when you play aggressively in your recovery of units, it becomes a very different game, and I think to some extent a much better game, because what you're actually doing is you're withdrawing and regrouping, and it takes a lot longer, and it means that you're not just continually bashing units against other units. But they're not having a particularly successful game yet. The Saudi Arabians are looking quite strong, really. See, the thing is, he's got 2 depressions, and they can't move very fast. I would possibly try attrition, but I can't be bothered. Okay. Well, what I did yesterday was actually commit to destroying these objectives. I feel my luck is about to sway here. Yes. I was going to say it better do because I run the risk of getting bored. Not that I'm that bored, but I wouldn't want to play a game where I just couldn't get past the first stage. Another DR, look at that. How did I predict that? Okay, so these units are broken now. Oh, sorry, this one and this one. Well, this one in particular, because now that you can almost see the vast gap there. So that front line sort of, let's draw it, hell of it. So the front line is sort of suddenly more like this. So this unit is really going to have to start moving this way. You know, he's now got to give up his space. Okay. Can move two along the tracks. As you can see now, this objective is destroyed. So that's one of those little sort of stone entrenchments that they seem to use. I'm going to recover them. And let's see, Saudi Arabian tone, isn't it? Okay. The thing I like about this game is it's incredibly tight. Maybe that's not the right word. Sparse. There's just not enough room really for sort of, or there's not enough scope for any sort of, not major battles, but particular outflanking, because there's just not enough units, and I think it forces a different game. You know, I think there's an appeal to games where you've got more of a front line and you can break through. Where here it is quite fluid, and I think maybe more to the point, it's very slow. I mean, there's no artillery, but so I think it's quite a difficult game in takes, and I quite like it for that. Need them to recover. So these are now active again. And this is where you'll possibly begin to see the benefits of these faster units. Now I don't know what to do, but I think I might try and hit him again, because I want to go in this direction anyway, and I want to break this front here. I mean, you know, that's the sort of level that we're at. I mean, you know, I'm trying to sort of this major outflank here, and what's he got against me? 2 units. This whole flank is held by 2 units, and this. And if I can destroy that, I can just blitz up here, almost unopposed. So he's going to sit there and destroy that. He's going to recover. Actually, I might speed things up just to do it like that. So I'll recover next turn. And here, let's go after that unit. Aha. He's on 4 depressions. We can chase him, but they've got that line. So this is the first main example of me just retreating, because I don't want to get sort of cut off from there, but I want to fall back to form, to help form this more denser line. So I'm pulling out of there now because it's been broken there, it's been broken there and there. I mean, the line is now going to fall. And another thing to possibly bear in mind, let me get the little drawing thing out, choose a different colour this time, is it's a slightly different game in that there's no easterly objectives for the Saudi Arabians. It's not as though leaving this big space is opening up any scope for them just sort of pouring through, because I've got nothing to stop them there, because they're not moving east, they're just defending their border, and these are sort of, obviously irregular units. So, but it's interesting that, the nature of this game isn't that they have to protect any sort of border, they just have to get it through and destroy as many of these red things. So he's moved back, and do I want to move these two back similarly? Similarly. Just going to give up on all those things. Okay. So you can almost evidentially see that line. The drawing tool out again. You can see it now almost falling back. But it's denser, especially here. And if I can pull this unit in there, and this unit, it doesn't leave them a lot there, does it? I mean, it's got one in reserve. That's what I like about this game. I mean, this whole flank here is held by just this one unit out here. The line suddenly falls to bits. I mean, if you lose that, there's nothing between there and there at the moment. There's just this one unit. These are quite large distances, really. Okay. Now, do we go back for that? Now we've taken that. What I want to do it this way. Four to one. A DE. but I didn't route him. It's there. I am going to go in this direction because I can attack him and get that. So now they're out of their defences, they're so much easier to just knock around. You know, we're just sort of running up to wherever they are, firing at them, and then they're basically just running away now. Now that their main positions have gone. And it's sort of interesting as well to look at the fact that I'm going over to this one, giving the Saudi Arabian units time to reorganize, and I'm wondering, you know, whether or not there was quite a lot of reorganization going on in their video, because they obviously can't be in 20 places all in one go. I mean, unless they were sort of all in one line along one road, which wouldn't be unlikely. I mean, to be quite honest, it's probably unlikely that all those 20 objectives were sort of equally spread as they are. But as I said, that video was like one of these units, you know, a very generous one of these units. So there are other groups, and you see them later on in the film when they're slapping a car. You deal with an enemy car or something. Anyway. And another thing I like about this is there's not a lot of units, as I've said, but it's a massive board. I did that on purpose. It's been a long time since I've done a small one, and I much prefer doing them. But, you know, when you need space, this bigger one really provides that, you know, the sort of, you know, the gaps in between units and things. Okay. Well, going in that direction has given us the chance to regroup, as I sort of said. Now, I think I might actually leave him there because he's got 2 depressions and he'll be able to recover. Because I think one other thing to maybe bear in mind, not too significant but not irrelevant, is that these are not of value objectives. They're not objectives with a value. These are not like international airports or capital cities. You know, these are just rocky outcrops that have been, you know, fortified slightly with rocks. You know, some of them are just where they've got their tents. They seem to set fire to everything they come across. But so, you know, it's not as though these are sort of, you know, so it does allow a different strategy, because it doesn't mean that the Saudi Arabians can't, you know, pull back from one of these objectives. It's not that sort of objective. It's not as though they're just giving up a village or a town. It's just, you know, a rocky outcrop, and so what they're doing, they're going along and they're just, you know, burning any vehicles that are there and their tents and whatnot. So there is a loss to leaving these places, because they have been doing it in a hurry. You know, stacks of ammunition, guns they leave behind, bedding, clothing, suitcases full of clothes, and you know they go through a lot of that. So it's no sort of small matter to give up, but it's again that they're not high value objectives. Aha, DE. Well, that was just a retreat. Okay, he's now on 6. That was right, because I left him there to recover. And this guy, oh, he's on 4. I don't know. Anyway, they're not doing very well. I really want to get these 2 units out of the way. I'm actually thinking of trying to contain these units. It's not impossible. One depression, none. This one. DE. No, moved. I don't want them digging in again. I haven't taken any losses yet. I think I've had a few exchanges, but I kept regrouping. And that would be cool, taking any losses since. Okay, which one of you 3 is the weakest? 0, 6, 3. Okay, let's go for this 6. It should be a 7-to-1 DE. Yep. You can see how this game's going to evolve. I'm going to leave it at that. So I think it's quite a neat little game, and I think you can toy with the dynamic of just trying to defend all these multiple locations. But I think, you know, they've lost 2 units, and now we've got, you know, massive superiority over here. I was thinking, well, maybe the Saudi Arabians can, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units against 1 can do some damage, but I don't think they can. You know, there's 2 in their stack, so it's 4 doubled into 8. You know, they could barely get a 1-to-1. And down here, they're massively outnumbered. So it's one of those games where it doesn't seem particularly appealing to actually just sit there and do the rest, and just take the time to actually go around one by one, taking each objective. I think it's one of these things that you can see the goal, and you can work towards achieving it. But the meticulous detail of actually accomplishing that isn't actually that critical. And that said, I used to play Civilization a number of years ago, and I would almost play it right down to the very last unit. And you know, and sometimes that could take, you know, I don't want to say days, but you know, maybe a couple of days to actually, you know, to get to. Quite often I play for a few days, but maybe, you know, 3 or 4 hours at the very least. You knew you'd won the game. I mean, in Civilization, it happened so many times. I knew I'd won. You know, I'd look at the scores, and you could maybe imagine that this somehow they can, you know, they can make a comeback. But generally speaking, you know, when you play Civilization, the AI can't make a comeback. It just doesn't have enough troops, resources, and, you know, settlements and things. But nonetheless, I quite often would go right to the very last unit, so I'd get that sort of that victory thing. So it's, you know, it's not something that gamers don't do. And here, and you can see quite clearly, it looks quite nice actually. Sort of, you know, it's quite convincing. There's this sort of spread there, just down there, and you can see that as the sort of the border. So that was sort of, we destroyed all those embankments, or whatever you call it, as entrenchments. There's only that one there that's sort of an outlier on that wedge. But to sort of work through and do the rest, I think it's inevitable, but you can sort of see how that's been working out. You know, I think that, you know, again, you know, I think it's quite an interesting little game, but it's not, doesn't have the sort of full scope of the so much more solid sort of mass of units. But you know, they're not all going to be sort of like these massively competitive games. I think there is a small degree of competitiveness in that, but what I'm trying to get to is that it's more of a simulation. I mean, once you sort of get an idea of what's happening, you can start wondering, you know, what these Saudi Arabian units are actually going to do, or what you might imagine they're doing. What I've done there, I've tried to move forward, and I think that's probably a bit of a mistake actually. I tried to move forward and to sort of bring the Saudi Arabian units into that sort of line there, and I'm not trying to make a line here, but you know, the Houthis have just broken that, and I think I would have been better off just continually almost falling back exactly as I said in that initial plan, to somewhere, you know, forming a line along somewhere like that. But even so, I think the only way I could possibly ever mount any sort of defence is by doubling all these up. Now I've lost 2, but I suppose I still had them. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could have 6 stacks against their 3. It still wouldn't make me strong, but it would make me a lot more defendable, because I would always be fighting at 2 to 1. There's not perfect odds. But I think, that would be almost what you have to do almost from the start off. When you've got this sort of situation, you just retreat straight away. But I don't know really whether or not that would have been the best thing. But even with 6 stacks, I mean, that's hardly going to afford you a line across the whole of the board. And the fact that these move so much faster, I think, makes a big difference. But it's still a terribly slow pace. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.